Wake.Show, as everybody knows, a show needs an intro. This is that intro. I am Fisher in the foreground, Sam in the back. Happy 420, everybody. Today's show will give you the munchies. There we go. Happy Friday, everybody. How you doing, Sam?
I'm doing good. How are you? Good.
And let's welcome in our sponsor, our first sponsor of the day, in the first 15 minutes. Thank you so much to Single Source Insurance for being a part of this. Good morning, Matthew. Nice to see you last night, Matt. And Alex, I've got your boy in here. He's on the couch, ready to go. Daniel, Robert, Sean, Stacy, good morning and welcome to the Wake.Show. Happy 420, everybody. We will be talking about, well, we'll hit that subject here in a little bit. But I also want to remind you, now that we're in a time of legalized marijuana in a lot of states, medically and otherwise. Alex says, hi, Russell, by the way. Russell's enjoying his time on the couch with the dogs. Let's see. There we go. Oh, no, I don't have a good camera shot of that. And good morning, Robert. Let me get you situated over here. There we go. I do want to remind everybody that marijuana still is a drug. Although I am a proponent, and I will be going in next week to see to get my to see if I'm eligible for my card. Please remember that if you're on the road and you're high as shit, you're just as bad as anybody who's on the road drunk as shit. So what are we going to do? Ride sharing. Perfect segue into what we'll be talking about today. Is it time to give up our vehicles, or almost time to give up our vehicles? A lot of stories in the news this week about ride sharing around the country, ride sharing, bike sharing, so on. So we're bringing in Russell Olinger, who is the creator of an app called Whipster, and we're going to talk about ride sharing and what his does is is it what you call it, an aggregate? Is that
the Trivago of ride shares?
The Trivago of ride shares. So instead of opening up your Uber app and then open up your Lyft app and seeing what the taxis are doing and the bus guy, and this, it all is in one place. So we'll talk a little bit more about that coming up on today's show. But before we get into much, good morning. Hey, good morning, Danielle. First thing I want to do is send out my condolences and thoughts and prayers as two deputies here in the state of Florida were killed. They were ambushed at a restaurant. This is Trenton, Florida, which is up west of Gainesville, up in that area. Around 3 p.m., two Gilchrist County deputy sheriffs were eating inside an Ace China restaurant downtown Trenton when a man walked up to the window, shot them through the window from outside the establishment. According to the sheriff's office, when fellow deputies responded to the scene, they found the shooter deceased outside the business, and Sergeant Noel Ramirez, 29, Deputy Taylor Lindsay, 25, deceased inside. So,
that's horrible.
It is horrible. And
I didn't even know that happened. So it's really horrible.
And to me, it's almost like one of those stories that I want to skip over now, just because I can't take the tragedies anymore. But when it comes to our law enforcement, especially, I think I would be doing a disservice by acting like it didn't happen today. So I could never do it. You think back on different career choices you could have made. There is no way in hell I could have ever been a cop. So hats off to all of you that do it. You put your lives in danger, even when you don't even think you're putting your lives in danger. Eating at a restaurant in northwest Florida, and some guy just shoots through a window and kills both of them. So let's get to On This Day today, and Sam's quote of the day. On this day, we like to take a few moments at the beginning of every show, do On This Day. Why? It's because I think it puts things in perspective, because there's stuff in the news like what I just shared with you that just makes you go, what the world's got to be coming to an end.
Columbine. I didn't even know that happened today.
Yeah, that happened today.
You would think that'd be the first story.
Well, it's a headline in the news today because there's a national walkout of schools all across the country, and it was planned purposely for today because of I believe 420 is also. I don't know if this is a myth. I gotta look it up. Is 420 also Hitler's birthday? I bet it's on this day if it is. Let's just go through on this day.
I don't know.
All right, so we like to put things in perspective on this day because in the end, whatever happened yesterday, whatever happens today, whatever happens tomorrow, it's likely not the end of the world, and will be a footnote in history. Will be an on this day one day. So here we go. On this day in 1980, Castro announces the Mariel boat lift. You know what that was? Does that sound familiar to you?
You can tell me about it.
All right.
I don't want to sound fiercely uneducated. I'm sorry.
Oh no, that's fun.
But it's fun.
What? Joey
I
Fox.
got a college degree.
Joey, puff, puff, pass. Coach Jim Ed Thomas used to ask me how much I smoked before the game. I loved Little League.
Oh my God. Was that Elliot?
No, this is Joey. This is going
I'm
back.
surprised.
This is going back to my hometown of Ocoee. And that's a guy. I almost said a kid that I grew up with. You know, a kid who's 46 or 47. Would you break?
I kicked something. I'm sorry, guys.
April 20th, 1980, the Castro regime announced that all Cubans wishing to immigrate to the U.S. are free to board boats at the port of Mariel, west of Havana, launching the Mariel boat lift. The first of 125,000 Cuban refugees from Mariel reached Florida the next day. The boat lift was precipitated by housing and job shortage caused by the ailing Cuban economy, leading to simmering internal tensions on the island, and so on. So that's what that was. It's like, hey, we're running out of room here. Go to America. Get the hell out of here. I won't shoot you if you try to swim to America now. Next up, Danica Patrick becomes the first woman to win an Indy race on this day in what year? No, don't look. I can see you cheating.
2008.
You don't want to
I guessed. I didn't see it.
You don't want to look ignorant that bad? 2008 is right. On this day in 1999, a massacre at Columbine High School. We'll come back to that. The Ku Klux Act passed by Congress. I don't know if I want to click on this. Let's find out what it is. 1871, with passage of the Third Force Act, powerfully known as the Ku Klux Act, Congress authorizes President Ulysses S. Grant to declare martial law, impose heavy penalties against terrorist organizations, and use military force to suppress the KKK. Whew, man, I'm glad it's that.
It is Hitler's birthday.
It is also Hitler's birthday today?
Yeah.
Oh, happy birthday, Hitler.
1889.
He would have been 1889. Also
128.
128 years
Sorry,
old.
129 today.
Let's see. On this day, that's pretty much it.
I'm surprised it's not on there.
What's not on? Hitler's birthday?
Yeah.
Huh, that is interesting. You're right.
It's a little weird. All right.
I guess they're I wonder if it was done on purpose, like, you're gonna erase his name from history kind of a thing.
I don't know. They're pretty like fair across the board about most things.
Yeah, you would think. All right, so that's it for On This Day today. What do you have for us for inspiration, Sam?
It's do your best today. Okay, the quote is, "We're all working together. That's the secret." From Sam Walton.
Are you sure that's not from Chris McCarty?
Honestly, it could be from anybody.
Yeah. All right. There. Well, hold on. Wrong one. There we go. I know that one makes you more happy.
That one does make me so much happier.
How you doing, Ryan, Martin, Jerry?
Oh, let me plug Bake More Pies really quick.
Go right ahead. Oh, on Facebook today?
Yeah. So if everyone goes over to the Bake More Pies Facebook page, it's at Bake More Pies. We will be posting surprises at every 30-minute increment throughout the day, and they're definitely worth going over and looking.
Do you want to share one with us?
Oh, I can share the first one.
Please do.
Okay. Are your marketing goals higher than your results? Let us help you grow your business. That was the first one.
Yeah, that one's
just
under
super.
the,
I mean, we're
that
just
one's
trying
under
to
the
promote
radar. That one's
we're just
under
trying
the
to
radar.
promote our business.
Yeah,
that's all we're doing.
Nobody's going to pick up on hire and grow. And
we're just trying to promote our business, but you can watch us promote our business every 30 minutes today.
The puns only get better from there?
Oh, they do. Oh, they're
right,
so
good.
funny. Check out the 421 about our business.
Oh, the one that will post at 420?
At 420.
Okay.
It's every 30 minutes except for that one.
Do you know why? You know where we get the 420 from?
I do, but I actually forget what it is. What is it?
Well, first, I'd like to say I don't. I think that everybody has settled on a story, but I don't think it's like 100% confirmed. But I guess it goes back to Southern California, some 60s or something like that, and the kids would meet after school to smoke some pot, and by the time they got to this one area that they would smoke pot, it was 420. So it just turned into a like code between them, 420, all right, 420, and it just kind of spread from there. And they were saying how it ended up becoming part of the culture, spreading across America. Because at the time you had so many bands like Jerry Garcia and the Grateful Dead and those kind of things would come through town and pick up the lingo there in Southern California. And I don't know. So that's what
it says on Wikipedia.
But
having lived in Southern California, that was the story.
Oh.
That we heard all the time.
Okay, all right. So when we bring Russell in here in a few, he was in Southern California for a while, so he's confirmed that that's the story that they heard too. They met by a statue or something. Is that right?
It was. There's even a specific high school too.
Yeah, yeah. So do you have the high school in front of you, Sam? Did it say what where it started?
It just said teens.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, also, I'd like to plug the Wake.Pups. If you want to follow them on Instagram, those are my dogs, Roxy and Joey, who are on the couch today and have had a rough week. They were under 2 days ago as they were getting their teeth cleaned. So this, I want to show this to you guys. I sent this to you already, right, Sam?
Oh yeah, Joey.
Yeah. So this is JoJo.
Here we're gonna.
And yeah, if you want to go ahead and get in, does it do that?
Switch it up, yeah.
So this is Joey, and this is my in-laws, right? And there's the pool out back. And Joey, when he loves the pool, he just sits there and barks at the water and blah 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 blah. So we bring him home. My wife brings him home on Wednesday, and this is him out back, where normally he is barking and tearing through the patio, having some fun. Right, here we go. He has no idea where he is. He's just looking around. And the post that my wife put, Joey, of course, because they make their own posts on Instagram, is #HighAF.
Yeah, both these guys definitely seem a little dazed and confused still.
Yeah.
Perfect for 420, I suppose.
Here's a peek at when I first got home after the doctor stole my teeth. It was a rough day. #HighAF. Poor little Joseph. They're doing a little bit better today. All right, I'd like to welcome into the studio. What's that? Got him? Got to get. There we go.
They're a little far apart.
Oh.
So.
Well, they're not quite in the.
They're not quite in the shot yet.
Oh, I see. You're trying to get both of them.
Yeah.
Well.
They're so far apart today.
It's all right.
All right. Well, maybe if they move closer. Joey, you want to move over?
All right. So we're talking about ride sharing today. What's going on in the ride sharing world? There's people that are getting rid of their vehicles because they're finding it more cost effective instead of paying car payments, gas, insurance, maintenance, and repairs. Some people, one of my brothers has gotten rid of a car. They have one car for the family, so it's for the wife, the kids, not the wife and the kids, but basically to run the kids around. But for him, he is a businessman, is out of town a lot, and it just works out better to have an Uber take him to the airport and back and whatever he needs. And so their family has become a half of a ride-sharing family. So Russell, let's bring you in, talk a little bit. You are an expert in this field. I want to figure out a little bit more. You're also the creator of the app called Whipster, right? The Whipster app.
That's correct.
All right, let's tell me a little bit about Whipster real quick before we get into some of the issues of the day concerning ride sharing.
Well, Whipster, as said earlier in the show, it's the Trivago of ride shares. We are an aggregation system, pretty much like you would find with Travelocity, Expedia, Kayak, Priceline. So what we do is we aggregate all the different ride share options from around the country. We also aggregate bike shares from all over the country and public transportation systems as well. So we're active in 400 cities across North America right now. And we list public transportation, all those locations. We have 85 bike shares around the nation listed. And of the 40-plus now ride-share companies that exist in North America, we list 13 of them and hundreds of taxi cabs from all over as well. All
right. Well, let's talk a little bit about ride-sharing. Should I get rid of my vehicle?
It depends on where you're at.
Where are we right now with that? Like I was just telling you, my brother has gotten rid of one of his. I know there's more people, especially in the urban areas, that have gotten rid of their vehicles. I'm also reading a story this week about how ride sharing has affected mass transit in America, and that some people are saying this is a bad thing. Some people say it's a good thing because our mass transit, our bus systems, and that kind of stuff are some of the most inefficient programs that we have. in America?
Well, yeah, there's multiple questions there, but ultimately, if you think about it, our transportation system, including taxi cabs and public transit, is kind of a 100-year-old system. It hasn't modernized. It hasn't used technology. And where Uber came along and Lyft came along and all the ride shares, it's causing a lot of these municipalities to really think their approach to modern transportation and how it's addressing needs of their citizens, and especially in urban areas. So one of the leading generations right now, the millennials, and now coming on the heels of them, Gen Z right now, as they're being referred to, is they're kind of contemplating ownership of a car. Do they need one? So like your brother a moment ago, as you were describing that situation, it's, he's gotten rid of his car. If you think about all those items that you listed, cost in terms of insurance and gas and maintenance and what forth, especially living in an urban area, you also have to deal with parking and so forth. So potentially parking tickets and whatnot. And you run into kind of, I think the average cost of owning a car in America per month ends up being like $750 a month.
Jeez.
So, and that's just the average. If you get up some of the more city centers like Chicago or New York or Washington, D.C. or anything on the West Coast, those costs can go up dramatically because parking gets very expensive. Insurance gets much more expensive, excuse me, in those areas. So you're looking at an average $750. And millennial generation, they've had a tough time coming out of the previous decade and finding work and whatnot, a lot of them living at home. And they found that saving $750 can translate into more money in their pocket and using an Uber, which is, $200 a month. Maybe.
Let's say you have a car payment, I don't know the average car payment, but $300 is not out of, not that high. So $300 a month. Mm-hmm. I know that I spend $75 a week on gas. So that's $300. That's $600 right there.
Just to operate it.
Yeah, and that's not including maintenance and repairs and, tires and all that kind of stuff.
Or the insurance.
Huh.
Yeah. So your cost you just listed right there is around $600, and the average is $750, and and you get closer into the cities, and that starts to go up and up. And the insurance is the big one too, because especially for the younger generation, we're getting their first car under the age of 25, and they're looking at insurance costs that are $400 or $500 a month for their first car.
Now, where's your expertise? What's your background? How did you get into this to begin with?
I'm an IT guy. I've been in IT for 30 some odd years, networking and security, programming, development, app development, and so forth. And I was literally, several years ago, I used to live in Los Angeles, and I went back there for a wedding probably about 3-4 years ago. And my buddies were all sitting in the lobby waiting to get a ride to go over to where the ceremony for the wedding was at. One of them says, hey, why don't you bring up Uber? I'll bring up Lyft, and our third friend, why don't you try and find a taxi cab, and we'll see which one can get here first. And we all just kind of looked at each other at that aha moment and said, wouldn't that be great if this was all on an app? And suddenly the idea was spawned for Whipster.
And that's all. Dun-ta-dun.
Bam, bam.
There we go.
Like that, yeah.
The rest, as they say, is history.
Yeah.
So what do you guys have available on the app then? That brings. What do you bring together, and what don't you have on there that you're looking forward to get on there?
Well, right now we have there's 41 ride shares across the country. I think it's 42 now. They keep expanding and more coming. Everybody knows the big hitters, the 8,000 and the 800-pound gorilla, as we like to refer to them, Uber and Lyft, respectively. But
there's 40 others out there?
There are 40 others, yeah. And I think that even the numbers behind it is actually astounding from an investment standpoint. So investors bet heavily on Uber and Lyft. They put nearly $19 billion into those two companies over the last several years. But there's been about $7 or $8 billion more invested in the additional ride shares. That's a hefty sum of investor confidence in this emerging industry.
Smokes.
So these guys are popping up all over the country. Most of them are operating in 1 or 2 cities regionally. So like in Tampa, unfortunately, where our home city is here, there's just primarily Uber and Lyft. Creeping up on the radar is a new one called Curb. And they are slowly showing services here more and more in Tampa, but it's still very kind of unreliable as you would expect to see from Uber or Lyft.
Because I would imagine too, as these new ones come in, because I know Uber and Lyft are fiercely competitive against each other, trying to knock each one out of the game. But these other ones, as they come in with an app like yours, then because I would imagine they're going to come in cheap because they're going to they want to get that business right out of the box. So is it true that like Curb would be cheaper than those other two immediate like right now? I guess my question is this: should we be paying attention to all the startups to take advantage of what those startups will be giving us.
Without a doubt, because a lot of them are coming in with better business models that are more friendly to the drivers. Like one of the frustrations with Uber, particularly sometimes with Lyft as well, and this is just, you go out on the blogs, you go out on Facebook and Twitter, and the driver community is just frustrated with their relationships with these companies. And Uber and Lyft, kind of, they've been in a dominant position because there's been no alternative for these drivers to go elsewhere. But these other 39 companies, 40 plus companies now, the drivers are looking at them for opportunities, and these companies are approaching with better incentives, better like profit sharing, or better payout on the per rides. So they're trying to attract the drivers over there as well, and a lot of them are getting decent success in their first cities that they're starting up in.
Before we move on to a couple things, first of all, thank you for the coffee.
Oh yeah,
It's good coffee.
That's
I never had a Panera coffee. That is delicious.
Yeah, it's just straight old coffee, right?
Yep. Yeah, I didn't even put anything in it. It was good. Yeah. And thank you so much to Single Source Insurance for being the sponsor in the first 15 minutes of the show. Thank you so much, Single Source Insurance. Go to singlesourceins.com. See how they can help you out. All right, who's going to win? Who's going to win this? Will one of the two giants take the other one out, or we can expect them to be the Coke and Pepsi for a long time?
They will be the Coke and Pepsi for a long time. And quite honestly, Uber is making gaining ground on Uber. Uber's had a lot of public facing issues over the last 2 years, especially with their CEO, executive management changing out, their relationship with their drivers, and so forth. And Lyft has made a lot of strides. They've also focused their business here in the U.S. and domestically across North America, while Uber's kind of come across a global approach. They want to dominate everything everywhere, and they're running into a lot of trouble overseas. And a lot of the other countries and governments are kind of pushing back on them.
Did they displace? They ousted the CEO, the guy that right? He was
Kalanick.
He had the right crazy to invent something like that, but not the right crazy to run a business, right?
Yeah. They had a lot of internal issues with a lot of backlash from internal employees, and this kind of that just cutthroat business model that doesn't really kind of have a place in today's society, especially with online social media and people able to fight back, and that public perception has really impacted Uber. What
do you mean by that? Was that old school, have all the drivers competing against themselves kind of thing to make everything better?
I don't know. I quite honestly, I don't know what instituted that culture over there, but I just, every time I read about it over the last 2 years, I just kept being reminded of the movie Wolf at Wall Street. Just cutthroat attitude, anything goes kind of behavior inside the company, and that's just not acceptable. And they paid a price for it, and I think they've changed out their executive management, and they're kind of getting, they're ironing out all the wrinkles right now, and they're kind of rebranding themselves. So
let me ask you, how often do you use your app? How often do you use Whipster?
I use it all the time. I do a lot of travel, and I tell you, and sometimes the Uber and Lyft are not the best option in a city, even if it is just Uber and Lyft, and the app tells you that, oh, right around the corner is a taxi cab for half the price because Uber and Lyft are surging right now.
That doesn't make. That's another thing too. You get a cab, or I'm sorry, you get a ride share into St. Pete at the beginning of the night, and it's like $11 or something like that. At the end of the night, it depends. It could be $30, $40 coming back if it's surging.
A lot of anecdotal stories like that. Big Lightning fan leaving a game one day, and there's this gal that was really upset. It was raining outside. She had taken an Uber or Lyft into the arena with her family of 4, and it cost her like $18 from Lakeland or something like that. But leaving the arena, you got 20 some odd thousand people leaving at once, all trying to get an Uber, all trying to get a Lyft, and the surge rate to return home for her was like $85.
Jeez.
So I was standing next to her in the rain and trying to keep us both dry, and I looked down at my app and I just said, why don't you call this cab number? They're available. They're right around the corner, and the cab ride was $24.
Look at that.
And it was just an instant, and she just thanked me profusely, and I think later on I got an email from her on the website, and she responded to saying, thanks for introducing this to us. Saved me a bundle of money that night.
By the way, Michael chiming in said it's learning a lot, Russell. Learning a lot today. And that's why I wanted to bring you in too. I think it was perfect timing. We could sit here and talk about marijuana all day, or we could also go, hey, a lot of people need ride sharing for different reasons.
Yes.
And so download Whipster onto your phone, and you'll have an aggregate right there. Do you have any competition out there? Are there other aggregate? Because I was looking up different things that are happening in cities, and I thought that I was coming across some guys but it was a different idea than what you have.
There's a few out there that have some. They're kind of in the starting phases of it. I mean, if you think about it, Travelocity, Expedia, and there's 14, 15 major travel aggregation systems, and all of them are extremely successful, and they're as they compete with one another. So this isn't exactly a novel idea in terms of what the service is. We just happen to be very ahead of the game. We also focus on other areas of transportation where the other competitors that are up and coming really only focus on Uber and Lyft right now because they're just focusing on the two big giants. I think they're kind of leaving out a lot of the opportunity to educate the public and show the consumer all the available options as we do. And that's why I think we're just firmly ahead of the game with the public transportation, the bike shares, and all the various ones we carry.
Is Whipster, your app, something that Travelocity and those guys would be interested in if you talk to them at all? They'd be like, oh man, we'll buy this technology and add it to what we're doing.
We have not had conversations with them, but yeah, it is a very logical play out that an aggregation system like that already integrates all the other hospitality and travel components of it, that would just see us as an extension of their future business model.
You mind taking a question about your app?
Not at all. Not at all.
Andrew, why are there so many permissions required for Whipster? What's he mean by that? What is that?
I think probably downloading the app and installing the app. There's permissions to get, that's, Android and iPhone. They both require permissions to gain access to your GPS usage, push notifications in order so when you confirm a ride with us or confirm information with us, we're able to respond to you that we've got your information and a receipt is on the way or a booking confirmation is on the way. So unfortunately, it's just one of those things we can't get around with the technology. And we also, down the road are going to be storing credit cards, so we have to have permissions that come in that are required by the actual phone providers themselves.
There was a recent survey of more than 2,000 adults, and they found that 28% of people had booked a ride over the last year, 28% of people, but they were surprised to find out that nearly 50% of people have said they had not used any type of ride share. So that's still half of Americans, or
Yeah.
it's still a foreign kind of a concept to a lot of people.
Yeah, it's really hitting home with the millennial generation and business travelers. That is the big one as well. A lot of business travelers, because their companies are abandoning car rentals, and when they get over there, they just want to grab an Uber. Don't even have to deal with going to get a rental car. And that's also one of the features we offer for business travelers as well, is you can create business accounts within us, and in the future we're going to be offering expense reporting at the end of the month for those corporate accounts.
Yeah, makes it easy. All right, so predictions on mass transit here in America, because one of the stories that I brought up is one this week about how mass transit in America is taking a huge hit. And that's not good, because from what I understand, it's already one of the most inefficient programs and services that you can get here in America. And so this could easily put them out of business, or it's going to force them to evolve.
It's going to force them to evolve, just like the taxi cab industry. And municipalities are already realizing that. They fought to keep Uber and Lyft out for years, and they just went around the municipality laws and the taxi cab regulations, and Uber and Lyft are here to stay. As a result, those other 40+ vendors are now here to stay as well. So the public transit aspect of it is a huge component. In a lot of the cities, they've tried their own hand at technology, but they're governments. They don't do technology well. They fail at it. So they're looking to the private sector to bring in a lot of solutions, and Whipster is potentially one of those solutions where we actually do all the aggregation for them. So it gives us the ability to lever partnerships with a lot of different cities and figuring out the other more niche opportunities in each city to get them integrated as well.
Let's talk about the taxis for a second. Where are we in that fight? Because as Uber came in, the taxis went, F you. You have no regulation whatsoever. We have to follow so many different rules. We're not allowed to go here. We have to wait in line there. We have to have light, da-da-da-da. And you're just swooping in here and taking all of our customers. And I want to, because I kind of go back and forth. On one hand, every time there's a new innovation or technology, you have those industries that are going to try to circle the wagons themselves and to beat out that competition. But on the other hand, you go, wait a second, guys, you're fighting for antiquated technology. You're fighting for doing things the old way, when here's something that's newer and better. So where are we on how ride sharing is Because I know they've passed a lot more regulation now where, it's not what it was 3 years ago. So where are we in the battle between the cabbies and ride sharing?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. There's some that are adopting it. So like one of the rideshare companies, two of the rideshare companies, one's called Via, based up out of Chicago, and the other one's called Curb. And there's a few more as well I could name, but they are taxi cab companies that have evolved to be more like an Uber, and they have a downloadable app as well, and you can track your ride just like Uber does, and they've evolved their system. And then you have the hundreds and hundreds of independents or smaller companies, taxi cab companies that are struggling to compete, struggling to survive, and they are the ones circling the wagons, to use your expression. And there's a struggle in that industry right now, and I think the ones like Curb and Via and 99 and a few others that they have evolved into what Uber and Lyft are doing, they're the ones that are going to survive. One of the features that we do offer in Whipster is for those legacy cab systems that don't have the technology, their expenses to compete with Uber and Lyft. We provide them a mechanism to kind of get their foot back in the game, maybe at least in the short term, so they can reevaluate where they want to go down the road. So we offer a product that allows them to showcase their services and their rides just like an Uber, but without having to build the technology themselves.
All right. In studio today, Russell Ollinger, who is the founder creator of Whipster, and talking about ride sharing today. Now let's get to the dark side. Some of these stories that are coming out where our very own Jameis Winston has been he is not charged, right? There's being investigated because allegedly he put his hands on a driver. We see these stories about people setting up Uber drivers and stealing them, stealing from them. There's even been rape associated with this stuff. So are those stories any different than what you would come out of the cabbie industry as well, or are they unique?
No, I think they're identical. Just no one covers the taxi cab industry because it's been around. Yeah, it's been around 100 years. So anytime you hear the word Uber or Lyft, it's the new word in culture right now in terms of transportation. And so anytime there's something negative that happens, you hear about that. But on the average, you're talking something like 80 million rides a day. How many of those end in the Jameis and Winston story like that?
What about the smart cars and the future of smart cars and ride sharing?
That's a real interesting one that we've been keeping an eye on and going to obviously continue to keep an eye on. But for our business model, it kind of doesn't impact it, because if Uber and Lyft and the other companies go driverless, well, they're still Uber and Lyft, and you need to compare rides, But I think from a cultural standpoint that a lot of people aren't ready to give up their drivers. Drivers have become in the Uber and the taxi cab, especially in my experience as well, and everybody else I know, it's like your bartender. You go there for a drink and you talk to somebody. So when you get in that Uber ride or that Lyft ride and you're able to talk to somebody on your way home, that social interaction you're not going to get from the driverless car. So eventually,
but you and I are from the last generation. This next generation, they're not as social as they're not as socialized as we are. They lack empathy skills. They don't look you in the eyes. They don't want conversation. They want to stay right here on their phone and have nobody talk to them.
It's a bit ironic, isn't it? The social media generation is antisocial. Yep. It might be, but I think the driverless stuff is still 15 to 20 years away. Eventually, it's going to happen. It's just going to move there. But for the next, the predictions in the next 5 years, 10 years, I just don't see it personally. I could be wrong. I just still think there's a big value in being able to talk to people.
Well, how long before I hit a button on my phone and just a drone comes and snatches me up like a pterodactyl and drops me off somewhere?
God, I hope not soon, man. That's kind of scary.
Well, man, I think I got all my questions out. Okay. When it came to ride sharing, and one of the biggest ones has to do with the future of ride sharing and whether, because there's story after story too, how millennials are not turning 16 and getting cars because they're so used to this Uber thing. Now, I think that's got to be more urban, right? That's in your bigger cities that kids are used to that.
It definitely is the urban area, because it doesn't start to add up financially when you're in more suburbia area and you've got longer rides and longer commutes, and your $10 ride in the city suddenly turns into a $30 ride each way. That starts to get, that's when people start going back to evaluating If I bring my car, I can park for $10. Otherwise, that's a $50 trip for me.
Right.
So, and then that becomes the cost effectiveness is gone at that point.
How are ride sharing different between the bigger cities like New York, where people are used to mass transit, and then places like Tampa, which is not a small city, but it is, we don't have the same mass transit. We don't look at things the same way down here.
It is night and day.
Yeah?
It is night and day. In Tampa, transportation has suffered, public transportation. So, but everything in Tampa and St. Pete, is generally a 10 to 15 minute ride. So it's an easy Uber. It's an easy Lyft. In New York City, on the other hand, a 15-minute ride, you're sitting in bumper to bumper traffic. So what normally would be a $12 ride in New York City is a $30 ride. So public transit is a huge component there. And rideshare is not as pervasive as it would be down here.
Am I saying your last name right, by the way? Is it Olinger or Olinger?
First, Olinger.
Olinger.
Yeah.
All right. Russell Olinger from Wake.Show app. Thank you so much for stopping by today. I've got some news to cover. I mean, you're more than welcome to stick around and talk about some of the news of the day. But I have a feeling you're a busy man. You've got other things you got to do on 420.
Yeah, can I get a real plug in real quick?
You sure can.
For everybody who hasn't found already, wipsterapp.com for the direct download, or if you want more information about what we are and all the services we have from a business or press perspective, you can go to our main business website, which is wipstermobile.com.
And that's where that is right there.
Hey, don't drink and drive, and don't get high and drive, right?
Really?
I-420 day.
Yeah. And a lot of people think this, one of the things that is interesting to me is how many times over the years I've heard a pothead tell me that they're a better driver when they're high. And as somebody who's become a proponent himself over the years, I've switched from Ambien or Xanax to go to sleep at night to medical. That seems ridiculous to me.
No, anything that slows down your senses is not going to make you a
and
better
your
driver.
sentences.
Yeah, and your sentences as well. Yeah.
Danielle says, Chris and Russell, you're so right about the millennials. They are so into social media, but very antisocial. They have no idea what our childhood was like and what kind of fun we could have. Danielle, now we sound like our grandparents.
I know. We used to play out in the street. Oh my God. We used to play touch football in the street and tackle each other. Who does that anymore?
Yeah, now we sound like our grandparents. I used to have to walk to school in the snow.
Uphill both ways.
You don't know how good you have it. It's just the way it is. It's the way social evolution works.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you, sir, for stopping by.
Well, thanks for having me today. It was great being here.
And can you find your way out, or you just want to hang out here until the end of the show?
Yeah, I might actually. I'll sit on the couch with the dogs, and I don't know. They look like they're passed out.
Oh, you get over there. They'll be on. One of them will be on you real quick.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And a shout out for Tampa. Go Bolts.
And then Todd says, I've got a great idea for a travel app. I should talk to this guy about it.
You can find me on the website.
Okay, well, before I get, because that's an interesting part of your story too, is the app thing. Because as apps became big, man, everybody had an idea for an app. Everybody, oh my God, I got a great idea for an app. How difficult? Because this has been your world for a long time.
Yeah.
What does it take to get an app up and running?
It is not straightforward as building a website like some of the IT people think it is out there. There's a lot more to it.
You can't just come in, pay somebody a couple $100 a month, and
no, not a couple $100 a month. I mean, you get a couple $100 a month, and you're just going to get an app that loads with an image and says, "Hi, I'm an app." That's about it, probably.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a very expensive process. It's a very lengthy process, and quite honestly, it's still an evolving process as well. So as our smartphones are evolving, the technology to program for them is evolving. And granted, in some areas, it's getting a lot easier. But at the same time, as those devices evolve and get more technical, the programming also gets more technical as well. So, but there are systems out there that allow people to do hybrid progressive apps, and that allows you basically to kind of take a website and make it look like an app. And that functionality has evolved to where it actually has real mobility features, which is called native programming.
And that's a little bit more inexpensive, right? If you do that,
it's much more inexpensive, yes, but it's also simultaneously more complex in some ways because you have to go create these environments yourself. And basically, a progressive environment is you have to cater to now multiple platforms. Whereas before you program specifically for Android or specifically for iPhone, now you got to program for all of them at once. And there are still quite a few out there.
And how long have you been in the app game?
Well, as a app developer, this is my third year is in that, but I was ops and DevOps programming for the last 15, 20 plus years. So it was an easy transition for me.
In the last 15 to 20 years, when you're having conversations with people and you tell them what you do, What I'm sure you've had plenty of people go, I have a great idea. What is the greatest idea you ever heard from a layman, and what is the worst idea you ever heard?
Oh God, you're putting me on the spot on that one. I think I've heard so many bad ones that
they just kind of roll off your back. You don't even hear them anymore.
I think there's so many bad ones, it drowns out the good ones. So
I'm sure.
I'd be hard pressed to come up with something on the spot.
What about you? Other apps that you've developed, or one day you want to do make an app that does, or you're on it, Whipster?
Yeah, this is it. This is it right now. Yeah, this is where all my attention and focus is designing an app for the sake of having an app. I mean, these days there are millions of apps. If you're not designing something that people need, that solves a problem, that serves a purpose, I think you're just going to get lost in the noise.
Okay, I like that. Well, so what about for shows like this, a podcast? Is an app a great touch point, a great central area to if you're a podcast or an internet show like this, or no, focus your attentions elsewhere?
Not knowing your industry like you do, my initial response would be to say, why reinvent the wheel? There are systems out there that take your show and redistribute it for you. You don't need, and just like the problem with Uber and Lyft in the rideshare industry, how many users are going to download 40 different rideshare apps and fill out 40 different profiles? Right. So why not?
So I'm asking them to download another app,
another profile, and one more thing to tune into. Why not go to a platform that already aggregates all that information where they can just scroll through and like a TV guide and just find the show they want?
All right. Well, thank you for saving me a couple of dollars. I appreciate it.
Sure.
All right, Russell. All right, go join the dogs on the couch there, and I'll wrap up a couple of news events here today. Or you can stay right there. I don't care. You do whatever you want.
Can I stay here? This is fun. I'm enjoying this.
All right, I'm going to blow through some of the headlines of the day then, and we'll chat about it. Let's see here. All right, so I thought Chris McCarty was coming in today. Chris McCarty is a part of the show, but he's got a gig. He's out doing that Sugar Sands Festival. But he was talking the other day. He has saved from a cat that he once had. He has saved hair and ashes and whatnot. He's like, man, one day, when we have the technology, I'm going to clone my cat. I'm like, well, it's already here. For $50,000, you can clone your animal. And the story that I found this morning is it time to worry about cloning humans again? Because, now that we're in this new era. Now, we were talking earlier, Russell, I know that you are a dog guy.
Oh, yeah.
And I know that you've had some dogs in your past that are no longer with you that you would love. Would you consider cloning your animals?
No.
No?
No. I don't know. I mean, it's a little creepy to me, like some kind of super
Pet Cemetery.
Sci-fi Pet Cemetery kind of thing. I mean, you get the same looking dog, but is he going to have the same attitude? Is he going to have the same soul, the same chemistry? And I don't know. Is he going to want to slit my throat in the middle of the night? Probably.
There was a story in Vanity Fair a couple of weeks ago about Barbra Streisand has cloned one of her dogs twice. Whoa. And there are similarities, but she says they're definitely not the same. You're not getting the same dog. No. But that's something that we know because our DNA begins to change as soon as you're born. So even twins, as soon as you're born, you start to grow apart a little bit. Your DNA starts to change a little bit. All right, next up, okay, we have national walkouts that are coinciding with the anniversary of Columbine, and this is has to do with getting guns off the street. In St. Petersburg, students from several schools will gather at noon at City Hall for speeches, a conversation with Mayor Rick Kreisman, and voter registration for those 16 and over, as that continues to permeate the conversation here in America. All right, so after the horrible story earlier about the two deputies that lost their lives yesterday in Trenton, Florida, here's a fun story about a cop who kept pulling women over to ask them for dates. Not out of the state of Florida, though. Not out of the state of Florida.
Really?
Out of New Jersey.
Finally, not a Florida story.
Exactly. And it's funny because I feel like before hanging chads, right, I think that's when Florida got thrust into the punchline spotlight, was after the 2000 elections. Oh, Jessie says she wants to clone her dog Kahlua. I would. They're about $50,000, by the way, if you want to clone an animal.
Wow.
About $50,000 to clone your animal. If I had $50K, I would get on it right now. Roxy's 12 years old. Let's go ahead and get another Roxy right behind her. So before the hanging Chad thing, because I feel like that's when the dam broke and Florida became a punchline, and then it never eased. Like right after that is when you had like the Deborah LaFave stuff. Do you remember that? Where the hot teacher.
Oh yeah. Then Florida became the teacher predator state.
Yep.
Yeah, with multiple female teachers predicating on young boys who didn't know what they were doing.
They surely didn't.
Those poor boys.
All right. So next up here. Oh, this is a local story that I'm just curious in how this is going to play out for those of you that are following the Hulk Hogan thing. It's coming from Bay News 9. Judge rules that Mike Calta, who does, as most of you know, does mornings over at 102.5 The Bone, that he and other people, Spice Boy, their phone records over 3 years. 3 years worth of Calta's phone logs, along with Matt Spice Boy Lloyd and 2 other defendants named in the lawsuit, will be turned over directly from their cellular provider to Hulk Hogan's attorneys. Here's why. Hulk Hogan's attorneys are saying the defendants engaged in a conspiracy with one another over the course of that period, which included repeatedly exploiting and using illegally recorded videotape, which they leaked to various media outlets at different times. So very curious now. And by the way, I know nothing. Because people ask me all the time, they'll stop me this because I used to work over there and work with those guys, and I'm not even kidding. I know nothing about anything when it comes to this. I'm just as curious as you guys on how this is all going to play out. I do feel bad, like this morning. Hey, Johnny. This morning when I saw this headline, I was like, ooh, I was titillating. Like I couldn't wait to see what was in it. I'm like, I shouldn't be like that. I shouldn't be like everybody else. All right, next up. All right, we got the Uber and Lyft thing that we talked about, and the last 2 things that I have on my list today are not really, your breaking new headline news kind of things. It has more to do with humanity. First of all, coming out of USA Today and other news sources as well, is a story about how scientists are putting together our story, and it seems like every environment that we've ever entered into, going back tens of thousands of years, that the biggest mammal in that area disappears shortly after. Like as soon as human gets in there, it's almost like we walk into a new environment, go, all right, who's the biggest, baddest MF? Oh, that thing over there, you're out. You're extinct. And so that was one of the stories that I wanted to highlight today and bring it back to some modern nomads and their genetics here momentarily. I don't know, does this kind of stuff interest you at all about our history and humanity and whatever? You're like, screw this, buddy. I'm too immersed in modern day technology. I'm not thinking about man from 16,000 years ago.
No, but I think that we were talking a little bit about this before the show, what you were going to be talking about, and this is a absolutely fascinating story. I saw it a few years ago, and I thought it was one of the coolest stories, and I didn't know this aspect of what you're going to be talking about here today.
And what he's talking about is the people that we're going to come back to here in a moment. But throughout history, humans and their ancestors have perfected the art of killing big animals. Now a new study finds that as humans spread around the globe, extinction of large animals soon followed. Massive mammals such as woolly mammoths, elephant-sized ground sloths, and various saber-toothed cats roamed the earth between 2.6 million and 12,000 years ago. Now most all of them are gone. So a prediction from one of the scientists is extrapolating this out, pushing it forward 200 years, and says that the largest land mammal in 200 years may be the domesticated cow is all that's left. That elephants won't be around, rhinoceros, hippos, that the largest land animal will be the cow in 200 years. We'll see about that. But that brings me to this. These people. And you said you saw what I saw, I think, a few years ago, because these people were featured on a BBC series called Human Planet. And you may have, if there were even the promos where you see them walking on the seafloor with a spear in their hand and a little mask on.
They look like, literally when I saw it, it reminded me of like out of Pirates of the Caribbean, where the dead men are walking across the ocean floor with their guns and their spears, and these people are 200 feet down on the ocean floor doing just that, hunting their food. Amazing. And they're down there, 5, 7, 8 minutes doing that?
I guess the average dive is only like a half minute. But like the thing that you and I saw on Human Planet a few years back, that guy was down there for 3 minutes. And they don't take down Todd goes, move over, elephants. And he extended the moo. Good pun, sir. Good pun. And so, yeah, he was down there for 3 minutes. And I think they can be down there for 5-6 minutes. Not only that, but down 230 feet, these guys will go. So you're going, all right, that's all well and good. It's a group of people in Southeast Asia. They are the Baju or Bajau. Well, scientists were curious about these people because for over 1,000 years now, they've been living on the water and living this way. And they noticed that in their community, they all have these huge, like 3 times the size of the rest of us, their spleens. And spleens have something to do with releasing oxygen and blah, 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 blah. So their spleens are 3 times larger. Well, what they found was that those in the community that don't dive, because they thought, okay, maybe this is something that's happening within a lifetime. It's not, because those within the community that aren't diving still have huge spleens. The neighboring community that has nothing to do with the water does not have these large spleens. So when they break it down, I went through their genetics, their DNA, and found that they are evolving differently. They're evolving differently. And to me, I just love this kind of stuff because this is only 1,000 years. Is to me, all right, now play this out. Let's push this forward 10 million years, and we would have 2 different species. I don't know how many millions of years it would take.
I don't think it would even need to be that. If 1,000 years they evolved their spleen to be underwater, what would 10,000 years do?
There's one thing that we don't realize when we sit here and talk about ourselves, because we always talk about ourselves as being the supreme predator and we're the top of the food chain and we're the best and this and this and this. But what you don't realize is that there's only one species of human, which technically makes us very vulnerable to going extinct very quickly. Like if you look at fish, there are, I can't remember, 30,000, 50,000 species of fish. There's one species of human. And now, I guess, 20,000 years ago, there was like 3 species of humans on the planet at the time.
You don't even need to go back that far. I mean, if you look back to the bubonic plague or the Black Plague of the Middle Ages, that almost wiped out the entire population.
Yeah.
And that was one species that had no defense against that disease. And a handful did, and they survived. And now that handful of people, hundreds of years later, now has a natural immunity to that disease because they had that one genetic offset that gave them that immunity.
Yeah.
But had they not had it, you're right. One species, bubonic plague, Europe's done.
Yeah. And then the same kind of thing set itself back up again with the Spanish flu in the early 1900s.
That's right, yeah.
And we learned some things about that because there were people that were dying like this and then others that didn't. And it's because they had a certain gene that, that warded off that particular flu. But anyway, so seeing this story is kind of exciting because you picture a group of humans that have been living just off land in the water basically for over 1,000 years, and they're already evolving differently than the rest of the population. So in your brain you want to go forward a couple million years, but then in the story you see there's not going to be that split because the people that they're doing the story on, the Baju or Buja people, are getting smaller and smaller and smaller because of modernity. The laws in that area, they can't, the trees that they use to build their stuff, very light wood, has almost gone extinct themselves because of, man. And they have laws now that prevent them from doing certain things. So they've been forced to modernize. They're using engines now on their boats and this and this and this, which ties them to what? Fuel, ties them to gasoline and oil. And money, currency. So now they're being roped back into society or back into, I don't know.
So you mean in a few thousand years we're not going to have Kevin Costner's Waterworld?
Well, that's that. The one promising thing is that you never know how the climate's going to play out here in the next 100 to 500 years. So maybe they're the supreme race on the planet coming up.
Where the Himalayas will be the waterfront property at that point.
Yeah. And the Sherpas there will be learning how to dive for clams. So I just wanted to end the show today on those stories about humanity and where we are in our story. And just because that kind of stuff fascinates me. So, Russell, thank you once again for stopping by.
Hey, it was great being here.
I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
Make sure you download, if for those of you in the ride-sharing game, make sure you download Whipster, the app, and it's an aggregate, so you don't have to open up your Uber app, then go to your Lyft app, and then go look at this app and start comparing stuff. It'll all be right there.
Yeah.
Have a great weekend. Happy 420, everybody. Let's see, it's date night for me and my wife. I'm excited about that. I got a wedding tomorrow, and I got a long Saturday. I'm DJing a wedding. DJ at a wedding. They go right from there to Countryside Lanes, Maple Lanes.
You are going to have the Lightning game on in the background, right?
Oh, man.
3 p.m. game.
Oh, okay.
Can you make it?
No.
It's game 5. We're going to take the series.
I think I'll have to be at my gig setting up by like 3. Damn it. So I will be missing it. I'll have my little earbud in.
There you go.
All right. Have a great weekend. Be safe. Be good to your fellow man. Be kind to yourself. Most importantly, let your crazy breathe. Oh, wrong one. Hold on. Let your crazy breathe. There you go.